Okay, so here is what it should look like when you complete row 2. So as you can see, it's meant to be the bottom portion of the little pineapple fruits for the design. All right, so we're going to go ahead and continue with row 3 now, which is basically going to be a repeat of row 2. Only this time we're going to be placing our puff stitch, chain 1 puff stitch into the chain 1 space between each puff stitch instead of into an actual stitch. Okay, so I've already chained 1 and turned my work. So we're going to begin with the same count as we did with row 2, which was 8 half double crochet to begin the row. So here's 2, 3, let's do that one again, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so now we are going to be skipping this puff stitch instead of a normal stitch like we did down here. So we're going to skip the puff stitch and we're going to go into the chain 1 space, which is right there in between the puff stitches, if you can see that. Okay, we're placing a puff stitch and then a chain 1 just to separate the 2 puff stitches and another puff stitch, all in that chain 1 space. Okay, then to continue we're going to skip this puff stitch right here and we're going to go into this half double crochet. Now this can get tricky and I feel like this is where the count can get off when you're counting your stitches. So I find it helpful to flip it back over onto the other side so you can kind of see what you're looking at here. If you look here, this loop right here is part of this puff stitch. Okay, so when we completed this half double crochet, this was the loop on the hook. So this loop actually belongs to that puff stitch. Okay, so we don't go into that. All right, so we go ahead and if you'll remember that loop right there, we're skipping that because that's the puff stitch. That's what we're skipping. All right, so it gets tricky right there. I feel like that's a natural tendency to want to place a half double crochet in that because you're thinking, oh, I want to skip this stitch up here, but that's actually the chain 1. So we just worked into that chain 1. We're skipping this puff stitch and it helps maybe if you think to just go directly on top of this half double crochet from the previous row. So that's the first half double crochet. 1, and there should be 8 total in between puff stitch sequences. So now we're at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, and again we're going to skip this puff stitch right here, this loop that's above the puff stitch, and we're going to go into that chain 1 space right there. So we're going to place a puff stitch there, a chain 1, and another puff stitch. Okay, again, this is part of that chain 1. This is the puff stitch loop from the previous row, so we're skipping that, and then we're going to go into this loop right here directly above the half double crochet. And then from there you would continue your pattern, which is the same as row 2 all the way across.